Content to Revive Hi-Fi Canada, and boy, I am excited about this review. This is a treat. These are the JBLS38 speakers, and I have to tell you right off the bat, these are one of my favorite speakers of all time that I've ever tried, and I've tried a lot of speakers, and I can tell you that these are one of my favorites for sure, if not my favorites. It's right there with my Monitor Audio Silver 107G. In terms of being my favorite, and for different reasons. I'll tell you more about those as we talk, as we go along here. These were made in about, I think, the early 2000s, late 1990s. So we'll say the year 2000. So they're getting on there in years, and they're you could almost call them vintage now, I would say, but they're not the traditional vintage JBLs. They came from a different era. The vintage JBLs are from the 70s, a lot of them. If you remember, I had the Decade 16s on this channel, and those are fantastic, but I like these better, and mostly because they have more modern technology in these speakers compared to the 16s. They don't have a paper tweeter like the 16s did. This has a titanium tweeter, and we'll talk more about that as we go along here. So these are quite large for bookshelf speakers. So they're not the traditional what we think of bookshelf speakers now. These are more I would say in that era, in the early 2000s, these could be called bookshelf, but they do need a very large bookshelf for these. So they're big. They're about 19-20 inches tall, about 9 inches to 10 inches deep, and about 10 inches wide. So they're not small. You'll also notice that they're on their side, and this is what JBL recommends. These are interesting configuration. I can tell you that I use them upright as well. I use them quite a bit upright. I actually kind of like the sound of them upright just as much, if not more, than they're on their side. So take that from what you will. Let's go into the construction of this box. It's not extremely well braced. I'm going to come right out and say it. It's got quite a bit of a hollow sound when I knock on these boxes, and that's not so surprising considering their volume. So they have quite a large volume, so it might be harder maybe to brace that type of size of box. And they are also I think there might be some, I think it may have been intentional the way they've made these cabinets, in that that tends to give them a bit more oomph in the base. And they're also right where I find a little bit of hollowness when I'm knocking are these two front ports. So these are front ported speakers, and I love that because then you can put them closer to a back wall, and I put them in my living room closer to the back wall, and they sound amazing. They have pretty square shapes, but at least the corners are all rounded on these, which is slightly ahead of its time, I must say. It's got a nice cool silver front baffle on it. The ports has that nice silver, and the drivers have a nice silver ring around them. So they don't look bad. I think they had an interesting choice with the orange drivers. They certainly don't hide in the background very well. I have grills for these, but if you take the grills off, they're definitely something for people to look at. So that's pretty cool. They put out a lot of sound. So we'll go into that a bit more later. That's the first thing I have to say, is that they put out a ton of sound without distortion. You can feed them with a lot of power. These have a 8-inch polyplast woofer, so that's the largest driver in orange. I believe a polyplast means it's a paper-based driver with polypropylene on it, so like a polyplastic or some sort of plastic on it, polymer. And then it's got a 4-inch mid-range that's also the same polyplast material, and then it's got a pure titanium dome tweeter, and that's something that's quite good because these speakers and I believe the series after them, the S38 and if you remember, I featured the S26 on this channel as well that had the pure titanium dome tweeter. The pure titanium on these sounds really clear and sounds not so shrill. And when you move maybe to some of the later series where they have a titanium laminate dome, you'll notice a slight difference in the sound of the tweeter. And I prefer the sound of these. These are my favorite, at least in my opinion. I really like these tweeters. I think that these speakers are just, I can't really find much wrong with them, let's just say. I do think that these are starting to get more respect in the vintage JBL realm, I would call it, in the community. I think they're heavily underrated for what they are. They are among probably, like I have to say, these are probably right there with my Monitor Audio Silver 107G for being some of my favorite sounding speakers. I love them. They are, I mean, we'll go right into the bass. We'll start with the bass, and the bass on these, I think they're rated down to about 45 hertz, and I would consider that an extremely conservative rating. So I can give you an example. You can feed these 30 hertz, and I'm getting pretty loud sound. So the roll off is pretty gradual from 45 down. These can shake your entire living room. I can assure you they have that capability. They're just extremely powerful sounding speakers. They have a dual crossover, of course, because they're a three-way speaker, and we'll talk more about that in a bit. They cross over at 800 hertz and 3200 hertz from the tweeter to the mid-range. They have an impedance of 8 ohms, so they're easy to drive, and a sensitivity of 89 dB. So again, pretty easy to drive. Very nice. They're pretty heavy, so they're about 27 to 30, 28 pounds each. So they're not light at all. They're just really nice speakers. I have to say that the bass is something that I would almost say it's a blessing and a curse in this case. So these sound excellent with most of the amplifiers that I've tried it with. These are definitely keepers, but I haven't tried them with different amps because they're just good with all the amps that I try. But it does matter how much bass that you're feeding. Like sometimes the bass can be overpowering over the mid-range and the highs, so keep that in mind when certain types of music can do that. But this is just a small gripe of mine. They're just too good. I love them. The mid-range is where I do also think that there's a high level of clarity in the mid-range. Vocals sound amazing on these. They have a nice clear, for their age, I would say they're one of the clearest sounding speakers I've ever heard. And then of course the highs are crystalline, and they sound smooth. I just really love the highs on these speakers. They're excellent. And because they're a three-way speaker, I do find that, which makes sense here, that I get a lot more of the separation of the sound. So the sound stage is just really, really big on these, especially when you have them towed out like this with the tweeter and the mid-range out. I wouldn't say towed out, but they're actually the tweeter and the mid-range on the outside. They have expands their sound stage quite a bit. The imaging and everything is just absolutely fantastic. It's just you can hear every little instrument, every little thing that's going on in the song, and that is helped, of course, by the fact that these are three-way speakers. So you're getting the different frequency sounds being separated by the crossover and going to the three different drivers. So it has a bit more choice in terms of where it wants to play a certain sound. So that gives it an advantage over many speakers. But at the same time, you have to do that well. So you can't implement the three-way speaker poorly, because then it'll sound worse than a two-way speaker and a bad two-way speaker. And if you remember, the Monitor Audio Silver 100 is a modern two-way speaker, and it sounds phenomenal. It sounds almost like it is a three-way speaker. So there are definitely exceptions, and both of the two-way and three-way type of speakers that you try. What is a good speaker in a three-way is going to be a good speaker. It's a good speaker, period, and a good speaker in a two-way is also a good speaker, period. And it just comes down to design and crossover, and these do a very good job. The soundstage imaging, as I said, are fantastic. These sound very large, like they're almost, to me, they sound like towers. They have just so much power. I've used them as fronts in my home theater, no problem at all. They have, it says 89 dB sensitivity. I would say it's pretty accurate. It might, in my opinion, might even be more sensitive. They're super easy to drive. They just have, I can't, like I said, I can't find anything much wrong with these. And yeah, I would say that those highs sound beautiful. You do need to be careful too with amps that are a bit too cool sounding. You can have a slight brightness on them, but not really. I mean, it's really good. So thank you very much for watching. And these are, of course, I would say, like I said, these are one of the most underrated speakers, I would say, so far, but I think they're starting to get noticed a bit more now in our community. I think they're excellent. Once again, thank you very much for watching Revive Hi-Fi Canada, and the goal, of course, of this channel is to bring love to this hobby that we also love, and that trying out different amps, different speakers, and you'll be seeing more amp and receiver reviews coming soon. So thank you so much for listening, and if you like us, please subscribe. If you're enjoying this content, please subscribe. It helps us out. Have a great day, and see you next time on Revive Hi-Fi Canada.